So this is the question part. Was it helpful that we gave you examples today? Okay. It doesn't mean you can't ask us more in-depth questions, because we certainly understand that as you begin to write this, that other things are going to come up. Any budget, funding, justification tool questions?
Can you talk about the timeline? Are we applying for 3 years into the future, and what's year 2 and 3?
Linda asked, are we applying for 3 years, and if so, what does year 2 and 3 look like? What do you mean? What does it look like?
Last time we did it, which would have been 3 years ago, the first year we asked for this, the second year we asked for more, the third year you told us do it the same as the second year.
Here's the thing, this is 3 years of funding. I would anticipate at this point that you're asking for 3 years of consistent funding. I don't have any information at this point. I would be foolish to predict to you what our capacity to change funding would be. And when we began committing to 3-year increments of funding, it was our commitment to project to you 3 reliable years of funding. Okay? So that's really the best I can tell you. Go ahead.
And so that's different from last time, because we asked for year 1 this amount, year 2 was this amount, and we got an increase this time, in this last 3-year cycle.
In the last, oh, you mean can you ask for more than you got in the last 3-year round?
No. In the 3-year cycle we're presently in, year 1 we got this amount, year 2 we got this amount.
Okay. Funded agencies that got increases in the first 6 months of year 1, you were held flat, and then your increase began to kick in. We maintained, it was a situation of transitioning agencies up and down. So you were allocated a certain amount in year 1, but you didn't receive all of it because of the transition plan. So you did not get more in year 2 in terms of you got to ask for an increase. Nobody got to ask for more. You received what you were allocated in, what you were projected to receive. Okay? So if more funding becomes available each year, we'll deal with that as that comes up. Obviously, in the last 2 campaign years, we have not had significant increases in dollars. So it's been safest for us to stick with our original commitments and to look for opportunities as they might become available to offer additional funding where it might be available. Okay? Is there another question about funding?
Am I correct in understanding that we can include administrative costs that help support the programming in the impact strategy budget?
That's always been true.
Because I thought last time we had this big thing about like, no, you can't include the grant writer, you can't include.
No, well, what we had is a long and drawn-out conversation about what is admin rate and what is acceptable. And my cop-out answer 3 years ago is pretty much the same answer I'm going to give you today, whatever you think it is. I mean, your impact strategy budget should reflect the costs associated with providing service. Now, we might challenge you on the cost of a grant writer. That might be part of your overall admin rate, but not specifically tied to your strategy budget. Because again, it's about delivering the service.
And the funding justification form, if you look at Tim's example too, I just point out in that middle column, the third column, where he explained his expenses. We're asking you to divide out, help us understand what are the direct costs that you identify for supporting that activity, and the indirect cost. And Tim was sharing as he was developing this an example of, in their prevention outreach service category, their rent assistance is covered through another grant source, but there may be some indirect costs that can be covered by another source. And so here's a tool that you can use to try to explain how you might be using some indirect costs to support that activity that other resources aren't covering. So please do use that middle column as a way to help us understand, as well as you understand, how you really develop
thing I will say about our hope is that you will use the tool, particularly if you're asking for more dollars. You're going to need to use that tool and your logic model to demonstrate how the scope of your work has changed and grown, how you can contribute more to the achievement of the community level outcomes. Getting increased funding isn't just about, hey, now we know how to measure. While that's certainly an important goal for us, you're going to have to demonstrate not just that you can measure the way we've asked you to, but that you're making a certain contribution to the achievement of the outcomes that we've set, okay? And so the size of funding is going to be related to the size of the impact you have on a particular population and on the outcome goals in that focus area. So again, for those agencies who are working all along the continuum from transaction to transformation, okay, that's going to justify, if you use your logic model tool well and your funding justification form well, that's going to justify a certain scope of funding. The reality for you is if you do a slice of work in an area, that it will be hard for you to justify significant dollars in the focus area. Okay? That's very general, and I don't want to get into questions and answers about what about my strategy today. That's a conversation we can have with you outside of this venue if you want to talk about it. The other thing I want to mention to you, I promised everybody that we would give you feedback about the amount of dollars requested and the amount of dollars that were previously awarded. In early childhood, I don't have my glasses on, guys, so. In early childhood, the most recent funding year, we committed $905,000, plus or minus. We've got over $1.1 million in requests. So the other rumor we heard was that we'd gotten, again, it's always third hand, people saying that if you ask for increased funding, you'll be rejected. And that is not true. But what we're trying to share with you is the reality of what we think our funding environment will be. Campaign is going well, but we're not going to have an extra $1, $2, $3, $4 million. That's just a fact. Conservatively, right now, we're planning that we'll have the same amount of available dollars we had last year. Okay. Conservatively. That doesn't mean you can't ask for an increase, but what it means is you need to spend your time on this funding justification tool and your logic model, and particularly the client identification stuff. You know, how does your population fit into that target population? How are you helping us move the needle on some of these conditions will be a critical issue. This is competitive, and it's not competitive because we have a lot of new agencies in the mix. Many of you, not all of you, have asked for some kind of increase or forecasted some kind of increase in your letter of intent. And the majority of the increases have come from agencies submitting additional strategies for consideration or growth in their previously funded work. So, you are all creating a competitive environment, and that is a good thing, but I just want you to think about, as you start to put your strategy budget together, how you will justify, what rationale you will provide for that funding increase, and be very concrete about it. It will be a tough time for any of you who think you might do something, who hope you will do something in the next 6 months to a year. You're going to have to demonstrate that the infrastructure, the framework, the plan is in place and ready to implement, okay? Because this is not going to be a wish list funding cycle. Youth development, last funded cycle we had $1,073,000, and we've got $1,973,000 in requests. That's an 84% increase. Financial stability, we have funded $1,820,000. We got $2.4 million in requests. It's about a 35% increase. In health, In 2011, we funded $1,684,000. We got $2.8 million in requests. That's a 67% increase. And independents, older adults, we have funded $782,000, and we got $1,600,000 in requests. So, and I tell you, here's why I tell you this. Not because we don't want you to ask for more money. And honestly, if I could turn to Mary Klinger and say, could I please have $4 million? I would. But when I do that, she just laughs at me. So the issue is, one, we're going to have to be creative about how we all look for resources. It is useful for us to know what you project your need to be. But if we're going to be a good partner also in looking for additional sources of funding outside of our community through other collaboratives, we need to be really clear about what it is we're looking for and how we could justify it as a collaborative group going forward. So it is an important exercise for you to ask us for more. I want to set some realistic expectations for what our capacity is. Because we have awarded 6.3, you've asked us for 9.5. That's a pretty significant increase for us that we just aren't going to realize. The other reason I tell you this is because it is far better for you to scale your request than for us to scale your request, okay? And even if you decide to come back to us with the exact same dollar amount you put in your letter of intent, I can guarantee you we will ask you about scalability. So be prepared for that conversation. What does scalability look like? And what are the implications? And please don't say, well, if you don't give us all the money, we just won't do it. People have said that. Sorry, that sounded like a mom thing. I encourage you not to give that answer, okay? Because it's not helpful. Because then the volunteers are presented with a pretty black and white decision, and they may, to your dismay, decide, well then, if we can't fund all of it, we won't fund any of it, okay? And I don't think you want them making that kind of a choice.
Can I just ask you about the new last year and what was requested? Because I thought you said the numbers were the same.
She's asking what was the difference between last year's youth funding and requested. It was $1,073,000,
Yes.
and now it's $1,973,000. It's that pesky 900,000.
Yeah,
We don't
I
know
know.
what. Okay, so what? You'll take it? Okay. Well, the other thing, I'm just going to make fun of Barb for a minute. She thought we could all just vote or suggest who we wanted to take money from. So if you would like to suggest someone that you don't think needs all their funding, please write that on your proposal. Barb apparently is ready to do that. Just,
I now have lots of friends in the room.
you're welcome. No, please don't do that. You all do important work, okay? These are all important investments. It is a difficult and challenging process for us, and we are trying to balance asking you for the kind of information we think will help you be successful and feel like you've been fairly evaluated. The worst thing we could hear from any of you at any point in this process is, I don't think we got a fair review, okay? That would be bad. So if there are things you think we can do to improve the process, please let us know. We're trying to learn and improve all the time and try and balance how much do we need to know and what is really productive in the process. And the goal then is to make years 2 and 3 even more streamlined than we've made them in the last couple of years. Okay, so we only put you through this agony every 3 years.